Hi class. We now move on to our first topic for the second long exam. And this is on physical properties. So physical properties, okay, are consequences of the type of interaction that holds molecule together, no? And we call this intermolecular forces of attraction, okay, or IFA, okay? And there are four basic types of intermolecular forces. One is you have electrostatic. This is also called ion interaction, okay? Like for example, the interaction of sodium ion and chloride ion, okay? So this is considered the strongest type of interaction. That's why most compounds or ionic compounds which exhibit this type of interaction usually exist as solids, okay? Now, the second type of interaction is what you call dipole interaction, okay? And this interaction, okay, is the type of interaction that exists between polar molecules. Like, for example, hydrochloric acid is a polar molecule because chlorine is more electronegative than hydrogen. So there is partial separation of charges, okay? So if you're going to, if this one will interact with another chlorine molecule, this kind of interaction is what you call dipole interaction because chlorine is a polar molecule. The third type of interaction is also considered dipole-dipole interaction between polar molecules. However, it is given a special name, okay, which is hydrogen bonding because of its unusual strength of dipole-dipole interaction. And hydrogen bonding usually exists in those on those molecules that contain oxygen, nitrogen, and fluorine. No? Now, once these three elements are interacting with partial positive hydrogen, okay, then we call that kind of interaction hydrogen bonding. Okay. So, for example, here in water, okay, we know that water is polar. This is partial negative, partial positive. So if this one will interact with another with another water molecule, which is negative, then you have now an oxygen interacting with partial positive hydrogen. So we call that hydrogen bonding, okay? So expect that to be present in ammonia as well as in hydrogen fluoride. So here we are just expecting pure substances, no? However, if you have a solution, okay, a solution contains solute and solvent. And if there is a strong interaction between solute and solvent, then we expect that solute to be very soluble, okay? And again, we can relate that to the type of intermolecular force. So for example, here, acetone, no, can exhibit dipole-dipole interaction because of this polarity here. So it can interact with itself by dipole-dipole interaction. However, if you're going to place water, okay, you would notice that acetone is soluble in water, okay? That means there is an interaction now between the solute and the solvent. And if you're going to illustrate the interaction here, now here you have partial positive and acetone as partial negative. So they interact by hydrogen bonding also. Now in the case of alcohol, like ethyl alcohol, okay, the ethyl alcohol also can hydrogen bond with itself because just like water, it has an OH. But if you're going to place water, okay, again, your alcohol is soluble, okay, because the partial positive hydrogen of water can interact with this one by hydrogen bonding. But the main difference between the dissolution of acetone into water and ethyl alcohol into water is that in acetone, it can only hydrogen bond with water in one direction, okay? But here, there is reciprocal hydrogen bonding. The ethyl alcohol can hydrogen bond with water, okay? The water can also hydrogen bond there. This is partially positive and oxygen is partially negative. So there is reciprocal hydrogen bonding. So we would expect ethyl alcohol to be more soluble in water than acetone. Okay. Now, the last type of interaction is what you call London force, okay, or induced dipole interaction, okay. Now, why is it called induced? Because London force class is the type of interaction that is present only in non-polar substances, okay? Non-polar substances are those substances in which the dipole moment is equal to 0. Like for example, methane, carbon tetrachloride. Although in carbon tetrachloride, the bond is polar, as you can see here, but we consider the molecule as nonpolar because if you're going to draw the dipole moment is a vector quantity class, no? And if you notice, the sum of the vectors will be canceled out, no? So that's why the resultant vector or dipole moment of carbon tetrachloride is 0. So therefore, they are nonpolar substances and exhibit London or induced dipole. Why it is called induced? Now let's illustrate that with methane. Now, unlike in polar molecules, even if they don't collide, there is already a permanent dipole because of the difference in electronegativity. Like for example, in HCl, in water, in ammonia. But here, if we're going to illustrate this as our methane, and this is the nucleus of carbon, which contains the protons, okay? Now, since the hydrogen and carbon have almost the same electronegativity, so there is no pooling of electrons towards a more electronegative element. So meaning the electrons around the carbon are equally distributed, okay? However, if you have another methane molecule, okay, with electrons on the surface, no? Molecules collide, no? So if the first molecule is traveling at a very high speed compared to this one, what will happen? The electron on the surface, okay, will be repelled going to the right direction. So this one now, the electrons of the second methane will be concentrated on one side of the methane molecule. Of course, the nucleus will not move, so you have less electron density here. So therefore, this one becomes partially positive, and this one becomes partially negative. So the polarity is induced due to collision. So if there is another methane that is near with that one, then this one will also have negative and positive. So you will have a chain reaction. Now, since molecules are constantly colliding, there exists really an interaction between nonpolar molecules, no? But it's temporary because if there is no collision, they will go back, okay? But as what I've said, okay, collision is continuous, so there will really be induced dipole. And one thing about this one is that although this is considered the weakest interaction compared to the other three class, but this kind of interaction becomes very strong if there are a lot of electrons that are dispersed or polarized, okay? And that would happen if the molecular weight of the molecule increases, okay? So therefore, the higher the molecular weight, the stronger the London force, no? So tanong, now, are polar molecules of London forces? Yes, they have London forces because the basis of London is electrons. No? Now, since all molecules, whether they're polar or non-polar, have, electrons, then all of them have induced dipole. No? But usually for polar molecules, okay, the dominant IMF are usually the dipole-dipole hydrogen bonding, no? So we don't mention the London force anymore, okay? Unless, of course, the the non-polar part of the molecule is very long already, then it will already affect, no? Or it will contribute, no? To the strength of IMF, okay? So there. Now here, there are intermediate interactions, no? If there is a solute and solvent, no? Like for example, we know that sodium chloride exhibits electrostatic attraction by itself. But if you place this in water, we know that sodium chloride is dissolved. So what happens to the sodium chloride? Of course, the two ions are separated, no? And they are separated because, okay, the solvent interacts with each ion, no? So the oxygen is facing the sodium ion. So this will be surrounded. And the chloride, the hydrogen, the partial positive hydrogen of water will be facing the chloride, okay? So this kind of interaction would be ion dipole interaction, okay? So that's why if you remove the water by evaporation, the two ions will attract again, forming a solid, okay? So there are cases in which big non-polar molecules, like for example, bromine, no? In the lab, you have what you call bromine water. Now we know that bromine is non-polar, right? But in the presence of water, there is a certain degree of solubility with this non-polar, no? Because of induced dipole-dipole interaction, no? So if bromine interacts with water slightly, okay, there is a small amount of solubility, then we call this interaction induced dipole interaction, okay? Now, it is very important to assess, no? This kind of interactions because we can use this as a basis in predicting physical properties like boiling points, okay, melting points, okay, vapor pressure, okay, solubility, no, even viscosity can be predicted, no, as well as surface tension, no, based on the strength of IMF, okay? So generally, okay, the stronger the IMF, okay, the higher the boiling point, the higher the melting point. However, the vapor pressure decreases, no? Because vapor pressure accounts for the collision of the vapor on the side of the wall of the container, creating that pressure, okay? So why the stronger the IMF, the lower the vapor pressure? Let's illustrate this by an example, okay? If you have, for example, water, all liquids, okay, has certain amount of gaseous particles above it, no? because the liquid, once they reach the surface, there is a possibility for them to escape, okay? But that escape will depend on the strength of IMF, no? Now, if you compare this with acetone, no, which is also a liquid, so this can also escape. So, and this vapor will stay above the surface of the liquid, no? The same thing here with water, okay? So when they collide on the wall, they create a pressure. You call that vapor pressure, no? So if you notice, okay, if you compare the two, the acetone is more volatile, meaning it has more gaseous particles above it, no? And that is due to the strength of IMF in acetone, which is basically dipole-dipole. And dipole-dipole is weaker than hydrogen bonding, which is observed in water. So since the IMF in water is stronger, you have less vapor pressure. So that's why the stronger the IMF, okay, the lower the vapor pressure, okay? Now, in solubility, of course, no, it involves two components, no, the solute and the solvent, no. So we have the rule of thumb, like dissolves like. So if the solute is polar, we expect this to be soluble in polar solvent because there will be a strong interaction. However, if the solute is non-polar, okay, and the solvent is also non-polar, then expect that solute to be also soluble in that solvent. But if the solute is polar and the solvent is non-polar class, then there will be weaker interaction, and most likely your solute is not very soluble in that solvent, okay? The same thing if your solvent is non-polar and the solute is polar, okay? Ganon din, no? There will be a very low solubility. Now, we generally classify solvent as polar and non-polar solvent, no? But polar solvent class can be classified further into two, no? You call that protic polar solvent and aprotic polar solvent. When you say protic solvent, no, these are solvents that contain acidic hydrogen, no, a hydrogen that is attached to electronegative oxygen atom like oxygen, nitrogen, and fluorine. Okay, so for example, water has partial positive hydrogen, meaning acidic, that is attached to oxygen. So this is water, therefore is protic solvent. The same thing with methanol. This is also protic solvent. Acetic acid is also protic solvent, no? Because they have hydrogen that is attached to electronegative oxygen, no? Aprotic are polar solvents that do not have that kind of property, no? Like for example, acetone, no? Acetone is polar, but the hydrogen here is not attached to electronegative element. So this is a protic solvent. Ether, no, which is also a liquid, is also a protic solvent, no. Dimethyl sulfoxide, no. This is the structure of dimethyl sulfoxide plus. This is also polar, just like acetone, but this is aprotic, no, not protic. Okay, there. Okay, so let's try to look, predict some important physical properties, no, and try to correlate that with the type of IMF, no, that we have mentioned already, no. Now, but before that, okay, let's start with dipole moment, no. Dipole moment class would be a quantitative measurement, no, for polarity, no, and it is based on the charges, no, between the two atoms, between a covalent, polar covalent bond, okay, partial negative and partial positive charge like that one, okay. What are the charges of this one? Okay, divided by the square of the distance, no? That is based on Coulomb's law, no? And the magnitude of this dipole moment, of course, is very dependent on how the electrons are distributed, no? And we know that electrons can move, no, by inductive effect, no, due to electronegativity, or by resonance, no, due to pi electron delocalization, no, which we discussed, no, the different aspects, no, where pi electron delocalization can happen, no. So let's look at some examples here. For example, if you compare ethyl chloride, no, compare the dipole moment of ethyl chloride and vinyl chloride. Okay. Now, as you can see, both molecule has polar bond, no? Because chlorine is more electronegative than carbon. So the polarity or vector is moving in this direction, no? So the same thing with vinyl chloride, you also have that polar. However, okay, unlike in ethyl chloride, your vinyl chloride has a lone pair that is adjacent to the double bond. And you know what will happen if a lone pair is adjacent to the double bond class? This will overlap and delocalize, okay? So what happens, okay? There is a change in the direction of the vector going in this direction. And you know vectors, if they are in opposite direction, they can be canceled out. So we would expect that the dipole moment of vinyl chloride will be lower than the dipole moment of ethyl chloride. Okay, so there. Now, so if you have, if you're going to compare another compound, like for example, let us say methyl bromide, no, and then you have ethyl bromide there, okay, and then you have isopropyl. This is your isopropyl bromide there, okay? So these are non-polar part, non-polar, non-polar, okay? And take note that bromine has lone pair. So as you can see here, okay, if you're going to compare, polarity is due to dispersion of electron cloud, no? Making one end negative, the other one positive, okay? So as you can see, all these bonds here are definitely polar because bromine is more electronegative than carbon, no? But if that is the only basis, then we can say that all of these have the same dipole moment, but it's not, no? Because take note that the nonpolar molecule electrons are equally distributed. So what will happen is that this electron cloud will push the electron of bromine, okay, going to the right direction, okay, making the bromine more partially negative, and your carbon will exhibit some degree of partial positivity, no? So as you can see here, your isopropyl will have a greater dispersion, a greater push for the electron of bromine. So therefore, we can say that isopropyl bromide will exhibit the highest dipole moment, and the methyl bromide will exhibit the lowest dipole moment. Okay, there. Now, benzene, no? If we look at the structure of benzene, this one is basically non-polar. Electrons are equally distributed, no? Because this one can undergo pi electron delocalization, no? That's why, okay, if this one will overlap with the other pi, this one can also overlap with this one can also delocalize. So that's why benzene is usually illustrated like that, no? To indicate the delocalization of electrons. So its resultant dipole moment is 0. No? However, if you have, for example, toluene, as you can see, toluene has a methyl group here attached to the benzene. No? So we would also expect this to be nonpolar, right? Okay, because benzene is nonpolar and methyl group is also nonpolar. No? However, this one exhibit a small amount of dipole moment, no? A small degree of polarity, no? So how can we explain this? Well, this can be explained by what you call CH hyperconjugation, no? A CH hyperconjugation will happen if a CH, an sp3CH, take note that that carbon there in methyl is sp3CH, and you have a pi bond here, okay? So this sp3 bond, this CH bond, has a tendency to overlap or delocalize and overlap with the pi bond. So when this one delocalizes and the pi will move, okay, you can see that a partial negative and a partial positive charge can be developed. The negative will be here. This one becomes double bond and the hydrogen will become positive. So there is partial separation of charges. That's why toluene will exhibit a small amount of dipole moment. Okay, but you have to take note, class, that symmetry can affect dipole moment, no? Like for example here, no? If you have 1,4-dichlorobenzene, we know that benzene is flat. So if you have a chlorine here and a chlorine here, okay, the vector of this one or polarity is in direction is in this direction. This one is in the opposite direction. So we can say that the resultant vector or dipole moment here is 0. Okay, so therefore it will have a 0 dipole moment, no, and non-polar. Okay. So there are also cases, no, aside from this cancellation due to symmetry, no, the interaction, okay, the solvent can also affect the dipole moment of the molecule, no. Now take for example carboxylic acid, okay. We know that carboxylic is polar, okay, and of course it will exhibit dipole moment, no, or polarity, no. However, you have to take note that acetic acid can interact, okay, with itself, no, through hydrogen bonding, no, as illustrated here. This can hydrogen with this can also hydrogen. So you have dimerization process, no. Now, this kind of intermolecular hydrogen bonding, of course, can lower the dipole moment, no? Because your oxygen here is supposed to be partially negative, okay? Your carbon is partially positive, no? And your hydrogen here is partially positive. This is partially negative. This is partially positive. And look what will happen. If there is intermolecular hydrogen bonding, the negativity is somehow neutralized because of its interaction with the partial positive hydrogen, okay? So that's why if the concentration of acetic acid is very high, class, this will increase the interaction and therefore lowers the dipole moment, okay? And this one usually happens if there are placed in non-polar solvent, because in non-polar solvent, acetic acid will not interact with that solvent. Rather, it will interact with itself na lang. So that makes the intermolecular hydrogen bonding stronger and lowers the dipole moment, okay? However, if this one is dilute means they are very far from each other, okay? And that will increase the dipole moment of acetic acid. Much more if your acetic acid is in the gaseous state, no? there is no solvent, but it is in the gaseous state, then the dipole moment of that will really increase. Okay. Now, another important property is volatility, which we partially discussed, no? Volatility has something to do with vapor pressure. And we said that the more volatile, the weaker the intermolecular force. So we are now using intermolecular force of attraction, no? And this would make the molecule more volatile, no? So, for example here, okay, of course, this is also related. I think we have mentioned about acetone, no? Acetone and alcohol. Acetone is more volatile because it has a weaker IMF, which is only dipole-dipole, okay? Compared to ethyl alcohol, which is hydrogen bonding. And volatility can also be related to boiling point, of course, no? Boiling point is the temperature needed to convert a liquid to its gaseous state, no? At constant pressure. And you would notice that different molecules have different boiling points that can be attributed to the type of intermolecular force, no? So if we talk about alkanes, no? Alkane, like methane, exhibit London force, no? And if you're going to compare that with ethane, or you compare that with propane, or compare that with butane, okay? You notice all of this exhibit London force, no? But I said, okay, from left to right, the IMF increases, no? Because there are more electrons if the molecular weight increases, no? The higher the molecular weight class, okay, the stronger the IMF. So the boiling point of this one will also increase, okay, from left to right, because the London force, or you call that IMF, increases, okay? So what will happen if the molecule, two molecules have the same molecular weight, no? But they differ in the structure, okay? One is linear, like for example, butane, no? Or pentane, okay? But the other one is branched like that. This is your 2,2-dimethyl propane. The other one is pentane. Both are nonpolar molecules except that one is linear, the other one is branched. How can you compare the boiling point? What is the basis, no? So of course, both exhibit London force, no? But take note that intermolecular force is between molecules. So if we're going to draw another pentane molecule, you can see that there is a very large surface of interaction between the two molecules. But if you have 2,2-dimethyl propane, this is more spherical class, no? And their interaction will only be on this area. So meaning it is weaker. Okay, so the linear will exhibit a higher boiling point than the branch because of that. Okay, now here, similarly, melting point, okay, which converts solid to liquid, okay, is also similar to boiling point effect, no? The higher the molecular weight, the higher the melting point, no? That's because the IMF will increase, no? If the molecule is polar, that would also increase the boiling point and melting point, no? So for example here, if we compare ethyl alcohol, okay? That is your ethyl alcohol class and acetone, okay? Here, when you are comparing two molecules, predicting properties, see to it because there are two major factors that will affect the physical property. One is the polarity of the molecule. The other one is the molecular weight, because the higher the molecular weight, the stronger the London force. Now here, if there is only a difference of about 1 carbon atom class, then it is still comparable, no? But if one has a very high molecular weight than the other, okay, then you cannot easily predict, okay, unless there is direct proportionality, no? Now here, if you compare ethyl alcohol and acetone, okay, the molecular weight is not really that large, no? So therefore, we can predict the boiling point here, no? Now, in ethyl alcohol, the major IMF is hydrogen bonding. Of course, there is a London force because there is a nonpolar part. But in acetone, the major IMF is only dipole-dipole interaction and also the London force, which is similar to ethyl alcohol. So therefore, the IMF in ethyl alcohol, which is hydrogen bonding, is stronger than acetone. So we expect the boiling point of this one to be greater, no? So polarity can also be used as a basis for predicting boiling point. Now, let's go to melting point. Now, in terms of branching effect, there is an opposite effect here, no? Meaning if you're going to compare pentane and 2,2-dimethyl-propane in terms of melting point class, the linear will have a lower melting point than the branch. So what happens here? Because for boiling point, we usually look at the polarity of the molecule and the surface area of interaction. No? Now in solid, since the particles are very close to each other, much closer than liquid, there is an additional factor here that you have to consider. And that additional force that hold these solid particles together, no, is what you call lattice energy, no? And lattice energy becomes very high. That means the solid particles becomes very compact if the molecule is symmetrical, no? And you know what is symmetry, no? One type of symmetry is what you call plane of symmetry, no? Plane of symmetry means that if you have an object or a molecule and you pass a mirror, okay, in such a way that half of that, no, will be the mirror image of the other half, then we can say that that molecule has symmetry, no? And as you can see here, if your molecule is highly branched, okay, there are a lot of mirror images that you can draw, no, compared to the linear one, no? You have more for the branch. That's why the branch is more symmetrical and exhibits greater lattice energy, and that will increase the melting point. That's why the linear has a lower melting point. Okay. Now to illustrate that further, now let's look at these two compounds. This is you call this cis 1,2-dichloroethene. No? While the other one is trans 1,2-dichloroethene. There, okay? Now, if we're going to compare the boiling point of this, you have to look at, they have the same molecular weight. The same molecular weight because they are isomers, okay? However, if you compare the boiling point, okay, you compare their liquid, okay? Component. So pag liquid, we look at the polarity, not the symmetry. No? And if you notice, okay, we can predict polarity by drawing vectors. No? And you notice here, the vectors are in the same direction, and that will increase the polarity. However, here, the polar part is in opposite direction. So therefore, we can say that the boiling point of this one is greater, no? Because it is more polar. However, if you're going to compare the melting point, you have to consider the symmetry. The trans is more symmetrical than the cis. So therefore, the cis will have a lower melting point. Okay, there. Okay, Now let's look at other important hydrocarbons and try to analyze. Okay. Now here, if you have, for example, propane, okay, and you have propene, and then you have propine. Molecular weight difference, okay, not much, okay. So you can eliminate that factor. You can focus now on the other type of intermolecular force, no? So all of these are hydrocarbons, okay. So methane, propane is definitely a non-polar molecule, okay. Propene is also non-polar, okay. But propine, because of orbital electronegativity, no? Your carbon here is sp hybridized, so it has a greater tendency to pull electron from hydrogen, making this partially positive, partially negative. So somehow it exhibits a certain degree of polarity. Now, if you're going to compare the boiling points of these three, no? Which one would have the lowest boiling point, no? Now here, it would appear that the lowest boiling point here is the ethylene, okay? I mean propene, this one here, okay? And the second one is next to propene is propane. And the highest boiling point is the propine. Of course, there is also already certain degree of polarity, but there is an additional explanation why propine is really, or will it really exhibit the highest boiling point, okay? And why propene exhibits the lowest boiling point. You know, when the carbon is sp2 hybridized, of course, we always have to look at the intermolecular force of attraction, no? To correlate that with boiling point. So if you look at the pi electron of propene, no? The pi electron of propene class, which is this pi cloud here, are more diffused. They are more diffused, okay? So what will happen if you have another propene, no? With a more diffused pi cloud, they cannot approach each other closely because this pi electron here will repel, okay? And that weakens the IMF because they are very far from each other, okay? Whereas in propane, okay, they can approach closely like that, no? Because they don't have the pi orbital. That's why propane will exhibit a higher boiling point than propene. Now, in the case of propine, when the carbon is sp hybridized, okay, this is more cylindrical, okay? The pi electron is not diffused, but rather it is more compact like that, no? So if you have another propene, okay, it can approach the other propene closely because the pi electrons are not diffused, okay? They are concentrated between the two carbons, so there is closeness. And if there is closeness, that means the intermolecular force increases, okay? Okay, now if you have, for example, benzene, no? You compare the boiling point of benzene and phenol, no? So obviously you can easily predict here because phenol is polar, okay? Benzene is non-polar. So we see that the boiling point of this one would be less, no? Compared to phenol, okay? Now, what will happen if you have say, salicylic acid. Okay? This is the structure of salicylic acid plus. You have benzoic acid, and then you have an OH here. There. Okay? Now, if you're going to compare this salicylic acid with OH at the ortho, so you have ortho-salicylic acid. No? Compare that with salicylic acid in which the OH is at the meta. Okay? Once there is, take note that this one has to interact, no, with another ortho-salicylic acid. Okay? And this one has to interact with meta-salicylic acid to form intermolecular force or intermolecular hydrogen bonding. Okay? However, you have to be very careful if there is an ortho-substituent, no? Because an ortho-substituent has the tendency to undergo intramolecular hydrogen bonding instead of intermolecular hydrogen bonding here. An inter is the basis for the boiling point. The stronger the inter, the higher the boiling point. And because there is an intra which disrupts the inter, then we would expect the ortho to have, okay, a lower boiling point than the meta. The meta, the inter is already very, very far. So less likely to happen. So the inter here will be stronger. So that's why it will exhibit a higher boiling point. Okay, there. So which one do you think will have a higher boiling point class if you're going to compare butylamine? No? Let us say butylamine. This is your 1-aminobutane. There, okay? Compare that with 1-butanol, okay? Again, their molecular weights are almost the same. So you eliminate that factor, you focus on other types of intermolecular force, no? Of course, butylamine exhibits hydrogen bonding. Butyl alcohol also exhibits hydrogen bonding. However, the boiling point of butylamine, no, is lower, no, than the boiling point of 1-butanol. And that can be attributed to the electronegativity of oxygen, no? Now, since oxygen is more electronegative, then we can say that the separation of charges between oxygen and hydrogen is greater. So meaning it is more polar and therefore exhibits a higher boiling point, no? Now, however, if you're going to add to the comparison, no, acetic acid, for example, you have acetic acid here, okay? As you can see, they have almost the same molecular weight also, but as you can see before, acetic acid can undergo dimerization, no? Meaning it can generate a lot of hydrogen bonding within themselves, no? Because here the oxygen can hydrogen bond, the OH can hydrogen bond. So that's why the carboxylic acid, okay, will have a higher boiling point than alcohol and amine because of stronger hydrogen bonding. Okay. Now, what will happen if you have the same molecule, no? Like for example, you have butanol, 1-butanol again, but the other one is you have branch. This is your 2-methyl 2-propanol, while this one is 1-butanol. They are isomers, okay? So what can you say about their boiling point? Which one do you think will have a higher boiling point? 1-butanol and 2-methyl 2-propanol. Okay, so we said that the branch will have a weaker interaction with themselves. The linear will have a stronger interaction with themselves. Okay, like that. Okay, then we expect this to have a higher boiling point. Okay. So now let's look at another important factor, solubility. So we have, I have mentioned that a while ago partially, no? That solubility, okay, solute will depend on the type of solvent. So you have like dissolves like, no? And of course, water is the most common solvent, no? And solutes that are polar, okay, have varied degree of solubility with water depending on how they interact with water, no? In the case of alcohol, okay, alcohol containing 1 to 3 carbon, okay, are generally soluble in water like methanol, ethyl alcohol, propanol, isobutyl alcohol, no? But of course, the higher the molecular weight of alcohol, like this one here, okay, and you have ethyl alcohol, okay, they both can interact with water, okay, by hydrogen bonding, right? But you know, the mechanism of dissolution is that the solute will be surrounded by the solvent, no? And as you can see, the nonpolar part, no, in 1-butanol is longer, and water has a difficulty of interacting with that, no? Surrounding that, solvating that, hydrating that, no? So we would expect that if the nonpolar part of the molecule increases, it will become less soluble in water. Okay. Now, what will happen if you have the same molecule like here, you have 1-butanol and the other one is a branch like 2-methyl. Now, a while ago, we said that in terms of boiling point, the straight one, the linear, will have a stronger interaction, intermolecular force. Then we said that it will exhibit a higher boiling point. Now, what will happen if we are talking about solubility here in water, okay? How does the solute interacts, okay? Now, take note that there are 3 types of interaction that happen in solution, no? One is you have solute-solute interaction. Another one is you have solvent interaction, okay? And then you have solute-solvent interaction, okay? Now, in order for the solute to be dissolved in solvent, this one has to break, okay? Which requires energy. No? So you call that endothermic process. But in order for solute to interact with solvent, this one has to release energy. No? If the energy released due to solute-solvent interaction is the same as the energy needed to break the solute-solute and solvent-solvent interaction, we call the solution ideal, no? Because there will be no change in temperature. However, if the solute-solvent interaction is very strong, releasing more energy that is needed to break the solute-solute and solvent-solvent, the solution will become hotter. Okay? So you have an exothermic dissolution process, no? But if the solute-solvent interaction releases less energy than is needed to break the solute-solute and solvent-solvent, the resulting solution will become colder, no? So you have an endothermic process. Okay, so going back to this one here, okay, your 1-butanol can interact with itself, no? So you call that solute-solute interaction, okay? Your 2-methyl, okay, or tertiary butyl alcohol, you call that, no? Can interact with itself. So that is also solute-solute interaction. And then you have now the water that will interact with the solute. Okay, this one can interact with this. This one can interact with this. Okay, so which one will have a stronger solute solvent interaction? Okay, it would be the branch, no? Because we know the branch has a weaker interaction with itself. It has a weaker interaction with itself. Look at that, okay? Because it is more spherical, no? But the linear has a stronger interaction with itself. So because of its stronger interaction with itself, it has less interaction with the solvent. While your branch has a weaker interaction with itself, then it would have a stronger interaction with the solvent. So we can say that the linear will be less soluble than the branch. Okay. Now, compare these two in terms of their solubility. Let us say you have CH3, CH2, O, CH2, CH3. So this is an ether, no? Diethyl ether, okay? Compare the solubility of that, no, with the cyclic ether. There, okay? You notice they have the same carbon, the same oxygen. So they have almost the same molecular weight, no? So the factor that you have to consider here would be the structure because both exhibits dipole-dipole interaction, okay? So what can you say about the solubility here, okay? In water, okay? Now, as you can see, if the structure is open, okay, the single bonds are very flexible, no? They can rotate, okay? Whereas the cyclic cannot. There is a restriction for the bond to rotate. And what is the significance of that when it comes to solubility, no? In open diethyl ether, no? Take note that you have the water, okay, that has two hydrogen bond with the oxygen there. But this one, because of their flexibility, there is a tendency for them to cover the oxygen, no? Because they can rotate. And that makes less interaction with water. However, in cyclic, the nonpolar part is held at the back. So the water has a greater tendency to get closer to the oxygen because anyway, the carbon cannot cover it, okay? So we can say that the open is less soluble in water compared to the cyclic structure, okay? So those are important properties, no, when it comes to boiling point, melting point, and solubility. So generally, okay, if we're going to make a generalization, no, when it comes to solubility in water, no, for different compounds with almost the same molecular weight class, we can say that the salt of carboxylic acid like sodium acetate would be the most soluble, no? Followed by the carboxylic acid, okay? And this will be followed by alcohols, okay? Amines. All of this can exhibit hydrogen bonding with water. Reciprocal hydrogen bonding, no? Of course, this one is already a unique, no? And of course, this is followed by polar molecules like aldehyde, okay? Will be more soluble than ketone, okay? In water. there. And then you have your ester, okay, ether. They are less soluble already. Alkyl halides are less soluble. And then you have the hydrocarbons, no? Assuming they have almost the same molecular weight, okay? So in the structure of the molecule, if there are a lot of polar groups, no, unless of course that polarity is canceled out, no, like if you have say carboxylic acid here, no, and then you have chlorine, you have OH here, okay, compared with benzoic acid, and you compare the solubility of this one, okay, in water, then we can say that this one would be more soluble, okay? However, if you have non-polar solvent, no, like if you're going to compare solubility in carbon tetrachloride, no, and you compare, for example, benzene, no, solubility of benzene in CCl4 and phenol in CCl4, then we can say that benzene will be more soluble because you have the rule of thumb, like dissolves like, okay? So other important properties like viscosity class, no? If the intermolecular force increases, the viscosity also increases. Viscosity is resistance to flow, no? So it would be very difficult for the liquid to flow if it interacts strongly with itself, okay? The same thing with surface tension, no? Surface tension class is a form of energy, no? It is a form of energy needed to stretch the surface of a liquid, okay? And water is known to have a very high surface tension, no? Because of hydrogen bonding. That's why some insects can walk on the surface of water, needle can float. Of course, if you are going to heat the water, the surface tension, of course, decreases, okay? Now, another physical properties which can be related to intermolecular force would be the heat of vaporization and the heat of fusion, no? The heat of vaporization is the amount of heat glass, no, needed to vaporize, okay, 1 gram of a liquid to its gaseous state, no, at constant pressure, no. And in the case of water, its heat of vaporization is 540 calories per gram, okay. On the other hand, heat of fusion, okay, is the amount of heat needed to melt 1 gram of a solid to its liquid state, no? So in the case of water, ice, okay, its heat of fusion, no, is 80 calories, okay, per gram, okay? So all of these are directly proportional to intermolecular forces, no, except the vapor pressure, okay? So we move on to chemical properties. So after physical properties, we have now chemical properties, okay? So in organic chemistry, you know, chemical changes are indicated by 4 important indicators. One is that there should be a change in color that would indicate chemical reaction. Evolution of a gas is another one. What else? You have formation of precipitate, no? When you mix solutions and an insoluble solid is formed, you call that precipitate, no? Or there is a change in temperature. Those are indicators of chemical reactions, okay? Now here, we are going to focus, okay, on two important properties, no? Chemical properties that are very important in describing organic substances, okay? And these are their acidity and basicity, okay? Now we can explain this and we can predict acidity and basicity without doing any calculation class, okay? If you know the movement of electrons, you call that delocalization, okay? And this delocalization of electron, okay, can affect these two important properties, okay? And the effect of this movement of electrons, okay, is what you call structural effects. Okay, so we're going to review this one, which we have discussed already on characteristics of covalent bond, no? So going back to structural effects, okay, one type of structural effect is, of course, electronic effect. And the other one is steric effect. So this type of effect can affect acidity and basicity. Okay, so let's start with the electronic effect. Movement of electrons, okay, or electronic effect can be attributed to one, CH hyperconjugation. Oh, sorry, pi electron delocalization. Okay, delocalization. Mali, spelling. Okay, so this pi electron delocalization will lead to what you call resonance structures. Okay, so what are the important patterns that this kind of delocalization happens? One, okay, if the double bonds are conjugated. Okay, so meaning you have a double, single, and a double bond. Okay, this can undergo pi electron delocalization. So to illustrate this kind of movement, no, we'll use that 1,3-butadiene. Okay, so you have 4 carbon here. And take note that the pi bond is due to the overlapping of pz orbital. So you have another pz orbital here overlapping. Okay, so as you can see, okay, there is a tendency this pi bond is formed between the 2 carbon atoms, the same thing with the other one. But this orbital here has the tendency to overlap with that orbital because pi orbital are more diffused. Remember, So because of this overlapping, there is an additional bridge, okay, for the electrons to move. Originally, the 2 electrons in carbon 1 and 2 will only move within themselves. The 3 and 4, the pi electrons will also move within themselves. Now there is an additional bridge. So all these 4 pi electrons can now move back and forth. Okay? So to illustrate the movement, no, because this one now will overlap. All of this will overlap. Okay? So to illustrate the movement of the electron, we use a curved arrow. Okay? To illustrate that. So here, for example, okay, in 1,3-butadiene, you have a double bond here, and you have another double bond here. So if the electron from the left will move to the right, then we have to illustrate that by an arrow. This one will overlap. Look at that. The electron from 1 and 2 will overlap with the 3. This is your number 3, okay? Number 1. So if this electron will move, in order to maintain the octet rule, this one also has to move to the end. So you will end up with a structure in which this carbon will become positive, okay? The double bond now will become single bond because the pi electron moves, okay? The carbon 2 and carbon 3 will become double bond, okay? And carbon 4 will become single bond again, okay? But since this electron here moves to the last, it means to say that 1 electron is added to that carbon. So that will become -1. Okay? So as you can see here, they differ, the two differ only in the position of pi electrons. So that's why they are called resonance structures. Okay? And there is a rule, no? There is a rule when it comes to stability of resonance structures class 1. Okay, according to the rule, the most stable would be those structures that are neutral. Okay, so therefore, this is more stable than the second because it's neutral. That's why we usually represent the structure of 1,3-butadiene as the first structure because it is neutral. Okay. Now, another important rule is that if there are electronegative elements, okay, pi electrons usually move towards a more electronegative element, okay? And that is logical, no? Because electronegative element pull electrons, okay? But there are cases in which the electron can move towards less electronegative element, okay? As long as the octet rule is still followed, no? You still have 8 electrons for that electronegative element, no? Pero kung hindi na sa 8, hindi pwede, no? And then, if the resonance structure class has a lot of charges, like greater than 2 charges, they have less contribution to the stability of the molecule. So they are already rejected, no? And you have to take note that the more acceptable resonance structures, the more stable that molecule is, okay? And the more neutral the resonance structures, the more stable that resonance structure, that original compound is, okay? If there are equivalent resonance structures, in our example, they are not equivalent because one is neutral, the other one has charges already, okay? But there are cases in which all the resonance structures are equivalent, and that would make it stable, no? So for example here, benzene. You notice the structure of benzene class, the pi bonds are conjugated like that, no? But since they are conjugated, there is a tendency for this electron to move, no? This one can overlap with the next pi bond, just like 1,3-butadiene. This one will overlap with the next pi bond. This one will overlap with the next pi bond, okay? So it will generate another resonance structure that is neutral, okay? The double bond will be here already. The next will be here, and this one. Now, since you have two resonance structures that are equivalent, that's why benzene is not considered as an alkene. It belongs to another class of compound, which we call aromatic, okay? So to illustrate the delocalization of pi electrons in benzene class, take note that those pi are the unhybridized pz. So you have pz here, you have another pz here, there, and another pz here. So all of this will overlap. All of this will overlap there. It will overlap like that, okay? So that's why it will look like a donut, okay? Because the lower portion will also overlap with its with a neighboring. So it looks like a donut class, okay? That's why to indicate delocalization, in some textbook, benzene is illustrated like this, okay? So what is the true structure of benzene? Well, the true structure would be the hybrid structure, okay? And if you notice, okay, the hybrid would be the mixing of the two. That is hybridization, no? So if you're going to mix the two, that double bond will become single bond here. Notice this double bond, okay, will become single bond here, okay? So if you're going to average, each bond will become 1 and 1/2 because it's between double and single. So that's why we illustrate this by a broken line like that to indicate 1 and 1/2 bond. All the bonds are equal, no? And that is the experimental evidence plus that electrons are really moving. Because if it is not moving, if the pi electron is not moving, then we would expect two bond lengths. The single bond will be longer than double bond, right? But it turns out that all the carbon-carbon bonds in benzene are the same, indicating that pi electron delocalizes, no? Generating all equivalent bond lengths, okay? So in the case of 1,3-butadiene, since there are two important resonance structures, then probably we can illustrate the structure of 1,3-butadiene like this, no? The double bond becomes a single bond. The single bond becomes double bond. The double bond becomes single bond. So it becomes 1 and 1/2 also. So this will be the hybrid structure, no? The positive will no longer be fully positive. It will become partially positive. This one will become partially negative. So that would be the hybridized structure, okay? So that is our first case. Now let's go to the second case. Second pattern where pi electron delocalization happens, class, okay? If you have, okay, a lone pair adjacent to the double bond. So this one can also undergo pi electron delocalization. So to illustrate this, if you have, for example, a double bond here, and you have a lone pair, like in vinyl alcohol, okay? So see, you have the lone pair there, okay? You have hydrogen here, hydrogen, hydrogen. This is your vinyl alcohol. Is this the only structure of vinyl alcohol? No, because this lone pair can overlap with the pi. So when this one overlap, this pi electron has to move, generating an important resonance structure in which your carbon here will become negative, right? Because the pi electron moves. This one becomes single bond, and the hydrogen, the oxygen carbon becomes a double bond like that. Okay, and your oxygen will become positive because the electron moves. One of the electron moves. This is the lone pair class. So only one electron actually moves to the carbon because the other one is left to bond with that, no? So that's why you only have positive one. So as you can see here, okay, we said that electron has to move to a more electronegative atom. But in this case, the electron is moving to carbon, which is less electronegative. Why is that? Because there is overlapping. The lone pair overlaps with the pi. And this kind of movement is only acceptable as long as your oxygen still remains octet. You see, it is still octet, okay? So these two are important resonance structures of vinyl alcohol. And the first one would be more stable than the second one because there are no charges, okay? And what is the significance of this one, class? This would affect, of course, the dipole moment, no? Just like what we illustrated a while ago for vinyl chloride and ethyl chloride. Okay. So the third, okay, pattern where pi electron delocalization, okay, is observed if there is a carbonium ion adjacent to a double bond. This can also undergo pi electron delocalization or resonance. Why? Now, what is a carbonium ion class? A carbonium ion, okay, is a positive carbon that is formed due to heterolytic breaking, okay? Now, what do you mean by heterolytic breaking? Now, to illustrate this one, no, if you have, for example, ethyl chloride. Now, we know that chlorine is more electronegative than carbon. So there is a tendency for chlorine to remove the electron of carbon. So after the reaction, if the electron of carbon is removed by the electronegative element, then your carbon will be deficient of one electron kasi kinuha ng chlorine. So your carbon now will be positive and your chlorine will become negative. Okay? So your carbon becomes positive and you call that carbonium ion. No? And there is a change in the molecular geometry of the carbon class. Now look at that. In ethyl chloride, we know that your carbon here, there, if we draw the structure, the first carbon follows the general pattern AB4. So that is tetrahedral and sp3 hybridized. The second carbon is also AB4, tetrahedral and sp3 hybridized. However, if this electron here is removed, what will happen? Okay, here the first carbon is not affected. It is still AB4, tetrahedral, and sp3. But here, okay, look at that. Okay, you have 3 bonds. So this one now follows AB3, and your carbon becomes sp2 hybridized and trigonal planar, not tetrahedral anymore. Okay. Now, since there is one electron that is removed from carbon, then what happens? Okay. The pz, take note that carbon has pz orbital. That pz is there, but there is no electron anymore. Okay? Because that electron is removed by chlorine. Okay? Now, why I emphasize that pz? Because that is the one that will overlap, okay, with the double bond in our third case. Carbonium ion adjacent to the double bond. So if you have, for example, here, a double bond and there is a carbonium ion here, you call this allyl carbonium ion. So if we're going to draw that carbonium ion, you will have hydrogen here, you have the double bond, hydrogen, and then you have the carbonium ion there with the pz. There, okay? So if we're going to remove the pi bond here and illustrate the pz, you have pz here and pz here. Again, you can see that this one has a tendency to overlap with the empty pz. Take note, this one have the electron. Okay, so they can overlap with the empty pz, except that there are only 2 electrons moving in these 3 nuclei, 3 carbon nuclei. You have only 2 electrons moving, okay, because the other pz is empty. So removing that orbital and illustrate that using the curved arrow. The electron, of course, will be moving towards carbonium ion because carbon is positively charged and this electron are negatively charged. So the pi electron will move there with only 1 arrow. So what is the resulting resonance structure? This CH2 will become positive and single bond, while the other one will become double bond and neutral. No? So as you can see, these 2 resonance structures are equivalent, okay? Because in the first, you have positive in CH2. In the second, you also have positive in CH2. So these 2 are very strong. No? The structure, allyl carbonium ion, therefore, is very stable because the 2 resonance structures are equivalent. Okay. So that is the third pattern, no? To identify whether in the structure of the molecule it can exhibit resonance structure. The fourth one, okay, if you have a double bond, okay, between two atoms, okay, of differing electronegativity, that can also exhibit resonance, okay? So for example here, you have acetone. That's the structure of acetone. See, you have a double bond between 2 atoms of differing electronegativity, okay? So what will happen if you have that? Of course, the oxygen, which is more electronegative than carbon, can easily pull the pi electron. You know, pi bond is a weaker bond than sigma bond class, okay? So that's why the pi bond can easily move and generates a resonance structure of acetone, which will be like this. You have negative here, positive here, and you have CH3. There, okay? The fifth case is actually opposite to the 4, no? If you have two differing atoms, okay, with opposite charges, can also undergo resonance, okay? So yan yung number 4, no? Kung meron kang compound na merong negative dito, may positive dito, then this one can exhibit resonance because the negative electron will be attracted to the positive, generating the neutral one. Okay? Again, the neutral is more stable than the positive and or the structure with charges. Okay? So I think I will end here, no? And we're going to continue this one. Okay? So that's all for today. Bye. One more, no? Before we left, no? Let's go to the second first, no? Which is sigma electron delocalization. This is also called CH hyperconjugation, because the movement of electron is coming from sp3CH. Take note, it should come from sp3CH. So delocalization of this one will only happen if the sp3CH, this is sp3, and this is adjacent to a double bond. There, like that, no? Or you have sp3CH adjacent to a double bond O, no? Or you have sp3CH adjacent to a double bond N. There, okay? All of this, okay, can undergo sigma electron delocalization. So to illustrate that, in aldehyde, this is the structure of ethanol. This carbon here is sp3, right? So this can undergo CH hyperconjugation. And to illustrate that, okay, there you have the double bond, okay? This CH here can delocalize. It will overlap with the double bond, okay? So what will happen if that sigma electron moves? That's why it's called sigma electron delocalization. You have hydrogen here, hydrogen. That hydrogen there will become positive, okay? Because its electron moves towards the oxygen. So your oxygen becomes single bond and negative, okay? And here, there is a tendency for that negative oxygen to react with the positive hydrogen, completely transferring the hydrogen to oxygen, okay? Like this. So we cannot consider this resonance, no? Because this one, in resonance, you only have movement of electrons, but here, you have movement of electrons as well as rearrangement of atoms, okay? So this kind of changes, okay, or rearrangement is what you call tautomerism, no? Delocalization followed by rearrangement. And with this group of molecule that tautomerizes, it involves the aldehyde with a carbonyl group. A carbonyl group is the C double bond O, which we can also call keto group. Okay? Now here in the last, okay, after rearrangement, you have the alkene and the alcohol. So you call this enol. Okay? So therefore, the process is called keto-enol tautomerism. Okay? And that will happen if there is CH hyperconjugation moving towards the aldehyde, okay, or ketone, or even imines. Imines are C double bond N, okay? Now, question, is it the only one hydrogen here can undergo sigma electron? No, the three, but one at a time, no? So meaning in ethanol, there are 3 CH hyperconjugations, not only one, okay, but 3. No? So other compounds, like for example here, if you have CH3, C double bond O, CH2. Only those that are adjacent to the double bond can undergo CH hyperconjugation like this and this. They are all sp3. So all in all, there are 5, no? 5 CH hyperconjugations that could happen in this structure. Okay. And why CH hyperconjugation is very important, class? As you can see, the movement of the sigma electron makes the hydrogen acidic. Okay. So in some structures that exhibit sigma electron delocalization, like in ethanol, they exhibit a certain degree of acidity, even if the hydrogen is attached to carbon, which is not supposed to be acidic. But due to CH hyperconjugation, the base can attack that acidic hydrogen. Okay, so there. Now, if you have a structure like this one, okay, here, this cannot undergo a CH hyperconjugation class because although there is a hydrogen there, but the CH here is not sp3CH, it is sp2CH. So no CH hyperconjugation in that, okay? So that is the another type of electronic effect, okay? Now, the third one is you have inductive effect. Inductive effect class is polarization of electron cloud, just like the London force, no? It's polarization, and this polarization meaning disturbance of the electron cloud. This disturbance of the electron cloud is due to electronegativity, no? Due to electronegativity. In pi electrons, you cannot call that dispersion because it's overlapping of pi orbitals, so they really move due to overlapping. But here, inductive, the electron is pulled by electronegative element, no? Like oxygen, nitrogen, fluorine, no? They can pull electrons, okay? Carbonium ion can also pull electrons by inductive effect, no? Kasi they attract electrons. So to illustrate inductive effect, for example here, you have cyclohexanol, no? Or you have ethyl chloride, okay? In ethyl chloride, no, the chlorine of carbon is pulled closer to chlorine, making this negative, making this positive. So therefore, chlorine exhibits inductive effect because it pulls the electron. An inductive effect class is a function of the distance, no? Unlike in resonance or pi electron, even if the carbon chain is very long, okay, the effect for each carbon would be almost similar because they move from one carbon to another. But here, this is due to dispersion, no? Now, of course, since chlorine is very close to the first carbon, then its effect on the first carbon will be greater. So maybe you will have 2 positive there. Now, since this carbon becomes positive, the second carbon will also be affected. Its electron cloud will be pulled by the first, but the effect will be less already. So the farther the carbon, the effect will decrease. That is inductive effect, okay? Function of the distance. So in cyclohexanol, oxygen is electronegative, then it makes this carbon positive. Also, the next carbon will be less positive, no? Because it is moving away from the electronegative oxygen, okay? So, as you can see, by convention, if the oxygen, if the electron is moving towards the electronegative element class, we can call that positive inductive effect, no? Because there are cases in which the electron is not moving towards the electron negative, it is moving away, then you call that negative inductive effect. Okay, so here, this is now a combination of resonance and inductive effect. So for example, here you have cyclohexanol, you have phenol. Now, there is a lone pair adjacent to the double bond, and we know that that pattern will undergo, would indicate resonance or pi electron delocalization, and the delocalization is moving towards the ring. So if the delocalization is towards the ring, no, we use the ring as the reference, we classify that as positive resonance. But if it is moving away from the ring, then you call that negative resonance. Now, in the case of inductive effect, your oxygen is electronegative, okay? So this will pull electrons instead of donate electrons to the ring. So since it will pull electron from benzene going to itself, then this one exhibits inductive effect, okay? And this inductive effect, okay, is described as negative inductive effect. So this is opposite to positive resonance, okay? But resonance is positive because it is moving. This one is negative because it is pulling the electrons, okay? But there are structures in which both effects are complementary. Like for example, here in benzaldehyde, okay? In terms of resonance, okay? There is a pattern, no? This is double, right? Double, and then you have single, and then you have double. So there will be pi electron delocalization. And in this case, the movement of the pi will be going towards a more electronegative oxygen. There, okay? So you will have that kind of movement. And since it is moving away from the ring, then you call this negative resonance, okay? Now, is there inductive effect here? Yes, because C double bond O is polar class. So if this C double bond O is polar, it means to say that this carbon is partially positive. And if it is partially positive, it can pull electron from the ring, okay? It can disperse the electron from the ring, but not as great as here, no? In which your oxygen is very electronegative, no? So that's why its positive inductive effect is very strong. Negative inductive effect is wait. Last nagkamali ako dito Hindi to positive. Negative yung class, negative. No? That's why here, negative yung sinabi ko. No? But positive na sulat ko. Okay? Negative yan. No? So here, since the electron is pulled by partial positive carbon, then there is negative inductive effect, slight negative inductive effect, and also negative resonance. So complementary ito, no? Hindi opposing effect. Now, if the electrons are moving away from the ring due to negative resonance and negative inductive class, then we classify this group, the aldehyde group, as electron withdrawing group. Okay. How about if there are opposing effect? Because if resonance is positive, that is electron donating electron to the ring. But oxygen can exhibit negative, meaning electron withdrawing. So which one will be the dominant structural effect? Now, based on the experiment, there is an increase in electron density of the ring. So therefore, indicating that electron donating effect is the dominant, not the inductive effect. That's why we consider OH as electron donating group, an aldehyde as electron withdrawing group. Okay. The last one, we're going to emphasize that again. The last one would be steric effect. Steric is crowding of molecules, okay? Now, by the way, okay, I only illustrate negative inductive, positive resonance, and negative resonance. Where can you observe, by the way, positive inductive effect? Well, you can find this in alkyl group, no? Like here, if you have tertiary butyl chloride, you have chlorine here, okay? Take note, just like what I discussed about dipole moment, there is an electron cloud here, there is an electron cloud here, okay? The chlorine will exhibit negative inductive effect, okay? Because it is pulling electron. However, the alkyl group will push electron towards the chlorine, push the electron of chlorine. So with reference to the alkyl, it is pushing the electron, not withdrawing electrons. So we call that positive inductive effect. The bulkier the group, the greater the positive inductive effect. So methyl chloride, therefore, okay, has a lower positive inductive effect, no? Because its ability to push the electron of chlorine is less, but the tertiary butyl is greater, okay? So because the positive inductive effect of tertiary is greater, there is a greater tendency for chlorine to break away from the carbon compared to the methyl chloride. Okay. Now the steric is crowding of the molecule, okay? And to illustrate crowding, we can see that in substituted benzene, no? Because in benzene, we can place, if there is an element here, we can place another element here, okay? At the ortho position, this is ortho, or we can place at the meta or at the para. The one that usually exhibits greater crowding or steric effect is the ortho position. And this kind of position will affect the chemical property, the acidity or basicity of the molecule, okay? So we're going to look at how steric effect, especially at the ortho position, will affect the acidity or basicity of organic substances, okay? So that's it. We're going to continue this next meeting, okay? Bye-bye.